Welcome guys to a Tech Yes City live stream, the second of the month here. Hope you're all doing well wherever you are in the world. And I got a throat lozenge this time, so hopefully my voice doesn't go out during the live stream. But if you guys got questions during the live stream, just pop in some questions. But today we're going to be talking about the recent Zen 4 launch, and Intel have fired back with their Raptor Lake. And the benchmarks from Intel are like even more head scratching than AMD. Like AMD's showing it in the best light, but at least they were testing their own sort of memory configurations with the other stuff the same. Like we're going to pull up the Raptor Lake straight away. Like you've got 3 new CPUs coming out that a lot of people are going to be looking forward to. There's the 13900K, the 13700K, and the 13600K. In a nutshell, you're going to have an extra 4 E-cores on all these lines compared to the previous generation stuff. And it's still going to be on Intel's 7 or 10 nanometer, true 10 nanometer. So the clock speeds, they're going to get a big boost as well, especially on the single core turbos. You've also got the E-cores getting a boost too, but also they're giving you more, especially level 2 cache. That is a big thing that's coming on these new lineup of Raptor Lake CPUs. So you should expect to see an IPC boost as well as a frequency boost. But in the meantime, let's have a look at what Intel decided to do here, which is very funny. They decided to essentially use some very odd memory configurations. And this had a lot of, like, it had me scratching my head. I think Linus Tech Tips made a dedicated video just talking about how weird some of these configurations were. For instance, they're using 5600 megahertz memory, which you might be thinking, well, shouldn't you use 6000 megahertz? And a lot of people were, myself included, but then I checked the CL timings and they're using CL28. So that's pretty good DDR5 memory that they've got on display here. But then they're going over to the 5800 X3D, which a lot of people are looking at, right? The X3D, even after Zen 4 launched, I think Zen 4 made the X3D look a lot more appealing because it's already a high-end CPU that you can couple in with cheaper DDR4 memory. You can get a B550 motherboard, for example, and you can get much better value even on the high-end gaming side of things than the Zen 4 AM5 architecture. And when we look at that in itself, you don't need, the new generation graphics cards coming out are going to be PCIe Gen 4 as well, so you don't need PCIe Gen 5. And in fact, the Gen 5 SSDs, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I've got a review coming up for the X670E Taichi motherboard, and it's going to be pretty crazy because they're including these heatsinks for the Gen 5 SSDs, and they're massive heatsinks. They're almost as big as CPU coolers, and they're going to have a fan on them. So if you want to get a Gen 5 SSD, just be prepared for some really high temperatures. And that in general, I think we're going to go over and talk a little bit, but before we get into before we get a little bit more into this, and we also got a donation, and thanks for that. I'll try to answer the donations as best as I can while we're doing the live stream, but I try not to let it take us too far off topic. So we got here, thanks for the $5. Best deal out there is the 13600K with someone's old RAM and new motherboard. A $500 upgrade that will make a budget user's PC scream. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'll talk about Intel supporting DDR4 memory even on Raptor Lake, which I feel is a huge plus, especially for people who want to get the chart-topping performance and they don't have a whole lot of money to go out and spend. A $300 X670 motherboard, go grab a new cooler, for example. There's so much more things to like about supporting DDR4, especially in this case. So I agree with that comment. It's like looking forward, all you have to do is wait. But another concerning trend is we got with the recent AM5 launch was we had these huge power consumption gains. And I call them gains because that's what it is, right? If we look at the 5950X out of the box, that was running around 130, 140 watts. Then we go to the 7950X, and that's going all the way up to 230 watts. And people in the comments were kind of defending that power consumption, and I was a little bit confused by it because if you're going to defend that 230 watts running way over the peak efficiency curve, then you, I guess, going to defend the 450 watt TDP from Nvidia, right? Everything is going in this trend. It's graphics cards, CPUs, where they're just All these guys, Intel, Nvidia, and AMD, they're all going for this chart-topping performance, and they just don't care about power consumption in the process. And the dangerous thing about that with PC gaming is that all the other things then go up in price. You need to go out and buy this expensive power supply that you probably didn't need. Go out and buy this huge motherboard. Go out and buy all this other stuff. Bigger case with more fans, better cooling. So it's this whole, like, all the augmented disadvantages come into play when you've got that higher power consumption figure. So power consumption is a big concern, and I'm not supporting Intel doing it, I'm not supporting AMD doing it, I'm not supporting Nvidia doing it on either GPUs or CPUs. And in fact, Intel's following that same trend, going up to around 253 watts on the 13900K. So they even say it in these numbers. We'll get back to the numbers here and quickly look here at what we got. So going over these numbers, these benchmark numbers, back to these benchmark numbers, wait for the reviews. Do not go out and pre-order anything. I've seen a few guys in the comments like, I pre-ordered my 13900K. Just wait. It might not be a whole lot better. If you're buying the 13900K for gaming, it might not be a whole lot better in games. And also we've got the RTX 4090 coming out, so we're going to see how much extra performance you gain on both AMD and Intel CPUs. Because at the moment, even at 1080p, you're kind of starting to get GPU bound, even on lower settings. So the CPUs are screaming in terms of performance. They have seen some big improvements, both on Intel and AMD. But I think the 4090 is really going to draw that out. So do wait for that before you make your decision. I think, plus we've got economics as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the stream, where even if we look at England, they've done a crazy thing with the bond market and the Central Bank of England. They're buying bonds now. It's actually, they went, oh, we're going to start selling bonds, guys. We're going to drop taxes. And then straight away, they're dropping the taxes, but they're buying the bonds back, essentially a process that could be monetizing the debt and creating massive amounts more of inflation. So if you're in the UK right now, the governments there are doing a very risky experiment with your currency. So that's another thing to follow suit. And at the time, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but we'll get back to the 7950X versus the 13900K. And we got here a $2 donation too, waiting for November for RDNA 3 before buying anything. Exactly. So you guys in the comments, we're all got the same thinking here. At the moment, it just looks like it's a big wait. So wait for Intel with Raptor Lake, wait for AMD with RDNA 3, and see how all this folds out. Because in the meantime, at least in USD, we're going to go over to the trusty DXY here, especially if you're in the United States, your dollars are only getting stronger in terms of purchasing power. So when that happens, a lot of these companies are feeling the pressure. For instance, we'll show you guys what's going on in Australia. If you want to buy a 7950X, forget that 699 price tag, you're looking at 1,209 Aussie dollars, right? That's a massive increase, especially if you compare it to last generation, the 5950X, when the Australian dollar was a lot stronger. So you've seen these price increases for a lot of other currencies, all because of the US dollar being a lot stronger. And so Intel's got their pre-orders out at $1,100. So you're seeing these high-end CPUs are costing a lot more in other currencies but the USD. So even in America, I mean, you're looking at around $600 US. So I will say one thing, in America, it looks like there is a bit of scalping, even from like retailers, not with the 7950X, but if we look at the pre-order on this, it's $660, which it should be about $589 or $600. So they are sort of charging a real early adopters tax on the 13900K. So in the meantime, just wait, guys. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give you at the moment. And if something else happens drastically in the markets, I will update a video on finance. But in the UK, this is the scary thing. In the UK, you might want to weigh up your options because the inflation could start to get out of control over there. Just all things considered. You got to remember, they're doing a lot of experiments with money right now that's never been done before in history. So it's a scary thing, and no one can really tell you exactly which way it's going to go. But when you print money out of thin air, it's essentially going to devalue the currency that you currently hold. So that's a pretty risky thing at the moment in terms of scenarios that could play out. So do be careful of that. Though, Intel, let's take a look at these benchmarks again, going over a little bit more in depth what happened here. video cards sort of laid it out in one easy sort of to see article with all the clock speeds, everything that Intel is going to be giving you here. So it looks like you are still going to have the UHD graphics on board, which is a great thing about Intel. If you're like me and you do Premiere Pro, I really benefit from the iGPU extremely. So I said that in yesterday's review of the 7950X. It depends on what applications you use, or mainly people doing productivity usually use one or max two applications. So look at what applications are for you, see if the upgrade's going to be worth it. But it looks like with a 3900K supporting DDR4 memory, it's going to be a lot more appealing than having to go out and buy, say for instance, 64 gigabytes of RAM. Because for me, I need 64 gigabytes of RAM for doing workstation kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind too. But these CPUs, they stack up pretty well in terms of specs, clock speeds, and everything like that. But again, these benchmarks that they're showing here, very sort of like, take it with a grain of salt, especially this on par here. Like, oh, we're getting similar performance at 25% wattage. Yeah, that's because with the 12900K, you're running it way over its efficiency peak. And then on this 13900K, you're dropping it down drastically. This would probably be running at maybe 4.4 gigahertz, maybe running at 4 gigahertz, and they're getting it down to 65 watts. So it's going to be running a lot more efficient. And if you drop down the 12900K to say or even 3.8 gigahertz, it might run at 65 watts. So you're not going to get 25% of the power. That'll run 65 watts too. Same power, you'll probably then get 50% more performance. So that straight away is like, it's one of those marketing things. They're trying to say, okay, because this is really poorly tuned, and so is this at 253 watts. These are both really poorly tuned out of the box. This is a lot better, the 115 watts here. I'll be aiming for something like this personally when I get this chip, just like the 7950X, drop it down by a little bit. In the case of the 5950X, that only saw a 5% drop for nearly half the power. So that showed you how far AMD were going above that efficiency curve. And so yeah, let's get this done. You guys are starting to ask some questions in chat. We'll get through the news on the Intel versus AMD scenario. We'll cover all bases there. Then we'll move on to chat where you guys can ask any questions you want, and I'll try and answer as best as I can. Though that's the first slide that's kind of got some really misleading stuff in there. The next here is the Raptor Lake leading performance. So they're showing here in this slide that basically you're getting a boost from frequency and then from memory and cache. So in other words, you're getting some IPC boost here from the memory and cache structure being changed over from Alder Lake, and then the multi-thread performance, you're doing the exact same thing, except you're getting more E-cores thrown in there, which is creating more threads, and that's giving you more multi-thread performance. So that's probably like the least misleading slide. It's not misleading at all, really. I think they are showing this one in true light. But then we look at the gaming benchmark numbers here, and they're showing it against the 5950X. And again, this is what, like, a lot of the benchmarks coming from AMD and Intel are using the 3090, when there's a 4090 coming out, there's RDNA 3 coming out. They're comparing it against each other's older CPUs. So these benchmarks are kind of invalid from the get-go. But then with Intel, they're using 5600 megahertz CL28, which is pretty insane. Then for the 5950X, they're only using 3200 megahertz CL14. So why not use 3600 megahertz? Everyone knows 3600 megahertz is like the go-to baseline for AMD CPUs on AM4, especially 5th gen and 3rd gen. So I kind of like these benchmarks here already. I'm looking at them and just scratching my head. Like, okay, Intel, what are you doing here? You're just going for these, massive gains, 107%. Like, just throw your 5950X in the bin. That's kind of what the message they're handing out here. But again, as we looked at before with those specs, they're using, actually coming to speaker specs, we'll pull up the most bizarre thing about Intel's comparison. So they also tested the 5800X3D with 3200 megahertz memory. That was, again, another stupid move by Intel in these benchmarks, because everyone knows, hey, run it at least 3600. It's what pretty much anyone will achieve with this CPU, and it runs a lot better. But then against their own, like I think even against their own 12900K, they were using DDR5 4800 megahertz. Like, it's CL28. So even when they're comparing it against the 12900K, even when Intel's comparing against their own CPU on DDR5, They're clocking at 800 megahertz higher on the 13900K. It's baffling why they would do this. This is the most misleading thing about the whole thing, is that they've got the same, looks like the same kit of memory, just they've tuned it. They've really disabled a lot of performance, left that on the table, all in favor of the 13900K. So Intel's benchmarks, man, like, wow, what were they doing with these benchmarks here? Then we got the next slide up here, which is the leadership gaming performance. You see here the X3D is kind of like nowhere to be found. Like, it's just this little dot so as to not draw attention to it. And you see the X3D is performing really well. It's a great CPU, especially for high-end gaming. Though I don't like, again, just wait, because we'll be able to see this tuned at least 3600 megahertz memory, and perhaps in some titles it will beat everything. So this is like, yeah, I don't know. These benchmarks really, like, not even a grain of salt. Not even a grain of old pepper that you picked up off the ground. That's how you shouldn't really trust any of these benchmarks. So that was pretty much what Intel's offering with their benchmarks and how they showed the numbers. And then the last slide was their, again, 13900K versus 12900K with different DDR5 memory speeds used. So how much of this is going to actually be accurate, we'll have to wait and see. So that was all the numbers for the Intel stuff, guys. Then we're going to look over to, before we go over to chat, we'll look at the pricing right now. This is what we're going to talk about. Again, no rush. Absolutely no rush here to go out and buy stuff, because look, this is the 7950X, $700 in stock. This has been in stock for days. Every market that I look at, whether it's locally here in Japan or if it's in Australia or in the US, these CPUs are in stock. I think I did look on eBay. There were a few people trying to, like, I guess they just thought, like, hey man, I'm going to try and scalp this. And so there's like these expensive 7950Xs up on eBay. There's a few of them, but I don't think they're going to get any sales this time around. So hopefully the scalpers, they can burn this time around. They really made a tougher situation even tougher in 2021 and also late 2020. Though, this is the biggest problem with Zen 4, AM5, is the motherboards right now. There is, AMD said, like, where's, from $125, the cheapest motherboard I can find is $260. That's the ASRock Phantom Gaming Lightning. So, or maybe $245 with a discount. So that's the cheapest motherboard you can get right now. If you go over to AliExpress, for example, you can buy a 5600 for $140. You can buy a B550 motherboard. This is just like anyone in the world can get this. You can buy a B550. I think it's the Sawyer. I've got to test this out soon as well. I'll be doing a dedicated video to this. It's gone up in price. Okay. But they've got an A320 for $53. This one here was $66, but it's gone up in price to $85 now. I guess that's because people have seen what's happened with the pricing of the new AM5 stuff, and it's just simply out of people's price range. It's just out of their budget. Especially if you're on a workstation, again, and you want 64 gigabytes of RAM, you can chuck in $460, as opposed to even just looking for 3600 64 gigabytes DDR4. You're going to be saving a lot of money here. So $168. So the difference is huge. Yes, it's probably not as good memory, but you can start to see when you're doing a workstation, you don't need ripper fast memory. So again, guys, just be patient. There's no rush for either Raptor Lake or AM5. There's no rush to go pre-order this stuff. There's no rush to go get it. UK is an interesting scenario. It's a developing story. I will be looking at what's going on in the UK in terms of their financial situation over there. And speaking of that, we'll pull the article up here. So basically what was going on here is they intervened in the UK bond market, where England was saying, look, the Bank of England was saying, look, we're going to be selling bonds. We're going to be essentially tightening the monetary conditions. And then what happened was the bond market, people in the bond market reacted. They started, I think they call it, like, there's some term for it back in the 80s, I think it was, where people, bond vigilantes, the people just, they get sick of it. They just start selling the bonds deliberately too. And they just say, we don't want any part of this anymore. And so when those bonds get dumped, the yields go up. And of course, the government's got to pay interest on those bonds, which they can't afford because governments are essentially in massive amounts of debt. And so that's essentially the Bank of England's like, whoa, the government can't go bankrupt, so we're going to have to step in and start printing money and dropping the yields down. So it's a messy situation. And again, it looks like if this continues on worldwide, people, this is a very scary trend because it looks like hyperinflation's coming, not just to the UK then, it could be hyperinflation's coming to the US and to Australia and to all parts of the world. And the problem with that is, right, what happens then is people who have got cash in their savings, they go out and spend it straight away because it's going to be worth less tomorrow. And so this in itself contributes to more inflation. And then after that, the biggest problem here, this is the biggest problem with the inflation, and especially fast rising inflation, is that you're then rewarding companies that are not giving you the best value. So for instance, you're just going to go out and buy out whatever you can. That's not rewarding that company for doing the best work it can do for society, if that makes any sense. So that's why inflation is so bad. You don't want it because it doesn't really support any innovation in itself. So yeah, no inflation, say no to inflation. And yeah, just UK's definitely taking the lead in terms of showing what the rest of the Western world's showing the rest of the West if it's going to create a lot of inflation. So anyway, guys, that's about it for the main topics. We'll move over quickly to today's video sponsors in the live stream. We've got here the Elgato Wave 1. Very good microphone from Corsair. I do have the Wave 3 in Australia. Highly recommend it for people who are just starting to get into recordings. Super easy to use, inbuilt pop filter, volume control there for the mic, and $70 at the moment. Like, it's so much cheaper than the Wave 3. I use the Wave 3, but it's $70. Wow, that's a bargain. So that's a really good buy. And then we've got, of course, SCD keys here. If you want to get a cheap Windows 10 Pro, which also works for Windows 11 though, I'm slowly getting frustrated with Windows 11, especially after all the recent stuff. You guys have been telling me don't use Windows 11. I'm going to, when I get a bit of free time, I'm going to go back to Windows 10. I'm just over Windows 11, but you can use this key for Windows 11 if you wish to. Use that code BFTYC, get yourself a sweet discount there, down to $15 US. Though, finally, let's go over now to chat. We'll chat with you guys. Questions. We got here a $10 donation from Island Dread, and they ask, Tech Yes City. So we'll move over to the Q&As. The Q&As, guys, the Q&As. Let's hang out. And sorry, I've been really busy too. I do apologize if I'm looking tired, because I am tired. There's so much going on. I've got to work out, like in about 10 days, I've got to work out the visa situation here because I had to go to the Australian Embassy to get a certificate. And the problem was with the Australian Embassy, I didn't realize there's such a big delay in Japan to go to the Oz Embassy. It was like 50 days. And so when I was there to book in, I met another guy who was in a rush as well. So I met some dude who was like in the exact same scenario. He's like, yeah, man, I'm in a rush. I got to try and get my visa extended. So it was a real messy situation. So I'm stressed in that regard. And then all this new stuff is coming. Like we got the 7950Xs, AM5, Raptor Lake's on its way. Like that's already being seeded as well to reviewers. 4090s are out there as well. I'm hoping I'll get one for review. And that's going to be insane. Like, look, the way PC gaming is going at this stage, it's getting very expensive. And I don't like that trend where they're all focusing on the higher end. I believe it's due to better margins because the basically inflation has hollowed out the lower end stuff, the margins there. And with that said, another trend you may notice is AliExpress is starting to get even cheaper than some of these places in America that have stuff on sale, in Australia as well. So I believe soon you'll be able to get some of the best value, even building a whole gaming PC off AliExpress, than you could otherwise in your local country, because you're eliminating a lot of process in the chain there that has absorbed a lot of this inflation, which has come through in the last 2 years. Though, let's move over. So $10 donation from Island Dread. Thank you so much. Kind of like multi-gen support like AM4. And yes, the entry cost to AM5 is crazy thus far until B650. But this main reason is still leaning on AMD plus curve optimizer as a thing. So I'm going to be looking into that for you guys. Again, when I get some time, I'm sorry, I had to explain the time situation. I do want to do a lot more testing, but I'm just in an impossible situation for pleasing everyone. And so I do want to look at curve optimizer versus my manual OC undervolt settings. Because I know for one thing, That manual OC that I showed you in the 4.8 gigahertz, it literally took me 5 minutes to find. It was that quick. The Ryzen Master, pull it up, and you're just making these changes on the fly. You're just dropping the slider, applying stress test, 2 seconds, just quickly see if it ramps up, if it's unstable. I got down to 0.96 volt, and then it quickly crashed out at 4.8 gigahertz. The whole system just locked up. I had to restart, go into Windows again, and then I upped it to 0.985, because generally with CPU undervolting or even overclocking, you have to find when that level of instability comes, then you can go a little bit over that. That's usually how it works, providing the stress test is good and it actually is stress testing the CPU. So, let's get on to these questions. What is the name of the Tech Yes City guy? So my name is Brian, and I am the yes man. But at the moment, I'm a bit of a mediocre man because so much on the mind. And we've got to do the used parts hunt as well. So I got to go do this visa stuff. But while I'm out, I'm going to be doing the used parts hunt of the month for you guys. Don't worry, haven't forgot about that. Brian, any plans to make a new video about Xeon processors anytime soon? Not anytime soon. I will once I get through this flood of new hardware, as well as some of the best used hardware out there at the moment, in terms of, like, for instance, I think at the moment you can pick up really cheap, even just i7s off the shelf. Last month, I picked up a 5820K for, I think it was just under $40. So at the moment with Xeons, they're in a tough situation too, because I do want to retest them, but a lot of the used stuff, like already good CPUs out there, are coming down in price a lot on the used market. So that's something to really, it's something to really look at the moment, is what you can get on the used market. The used market is going to be absolutely popping. I do want to get back to Australia, however, because over in Australia, everyone's telling me the deals they're getting on the used market, and it's better than Japan. Keep in mind, a lot of it is bulk buying off miners, but I'm hearing some of these prices and my jaw is dropping. You know, like for instance, there was RTX 3060s going for $200 US, right? They're going for under that. I think it was $190, $180. Someone was telling me 3060s are going for. So again, really cheap prices on GPUs. They're coming down in price. They're going to keep coming down in price, providing the at least America stays on track with their tightening, which, as we've seen with England, that could reverse at any time. And so, guys, be on alert. Be ready to react. Know what's going on. I'm going to be covering this for you. Know what's going on with money itself, because it's never been more important than ever. There was actually a graph that I saw the other day, since I think it was like sometime since the new millennia. There was this graph of how much GDP has grown since then. It was like 80%, but the debt has grown 7-fold since then. Extremely crazy situation, because that debt, you have to pay that back, and with interest, and the interest rates are on the rise now. So what happens, right? It's either an implosion or it's an explosion in the financial system. Explosion being the inflation, implosion just being huge amounts of deflation. It's going either way, and this is why I guess I'm probably not as positive as other tech reviewers, because I understand what's going on at the moment with the broader economy globally, and we're in an impossible situation that can't be fixed easily. Just understand that. It's not going to be fixed easily. There's no easy way to fix what is going on in the monetary system. It should have been fixed in 2000, should have been fixed in 2008, but it wasn't fixed. Anyway, Tech Yes City, Brian, have you seen the pricing of Z790 on Newegg? I'll check it out now, guys. I'll check it out now. The Z790s. We'll check out what we got here for Z790. And, okay, you don't need a Z790 either. Just go find yourself a cheap B660 and just update the BIOS and call it a day. Like, wow, get a B660 with flashback too. That might be the wise choice. I mean, there's the Riptide. Hey, the Riptide is pretty decent. I will give the Riptide that. I haven't tested the Lightning from ASRock, but the Riptide was a great budget, like, value board. So I'm hoping to give the Riptide another test for you guys. MSI have their Pro. That's pretty decent as well. The Pro RS, haven't tested these boards, but around $200 is not too bad. I mean, it's a DDR4 memory motherboard, so keep that in mind. It's probably a dead end as well, but again, B660 would be a better buy for me personally with DDR4. So Z790s, they can get really expensive. I personally wouldn't be buying a really expensive Z790 motherboard, I think it's a bit of a sink there in terms of money. But again, $140, this should be fine. Prime 660 with, especially if you're into a little bit of undervolting, which I'm definitely going to be recommending, definitely going to be tuning for when I get these CPUs. So undervolting's where it's at in 2022 and 2023. It's definitely going to be where it's at. So yeah, keep the questions rolling, guys. Loving it. And we're going to answer as much as we can because I got to go at about 12 o'clock, close to 12 o'clock. So I do have a lot of time, actually. We've been flying through the main topic here today at lightning pace. So we'll hang around and just chat with you guys. And yeah, we've got here the next question. How's Dadman doing lately? Dadman's just traveling. He's just traveling along every day, enjoying the vibes in Australia. I miss my dad. I miss my dad. I do miss Australia. It's weird because I'm coming to Japan. I miss my boys so much. I do want to bring them to Australia eventually, my boy and the ex. And so it doesn't matter what happens. I think I'll just keep calling her the X. It's such a cool name. It's like the X, you know what I mean? The next best thing. So Japan has crazy debt to GDP. Yeah. So we're talking about Japan, right? Japan should have had inflation. Japan should have had massive amounts of deflation, but instead they kept it at a level of no inflation, like pretty much flat. They kept that level of flat. And in the meantime, they accrued a lot more debt on the government side. And basically what's happened there is now there's two reasons. This is why I'm buying Japanese yen over Aussie dollars or grading English pounds, for example. The Japanese yen, and this is not financial advice, but the Japanese yen, the governments aren't as reckless and irresponsible as I know this for a fact as they are in Australia. Australian governments just waste money, waste money. At least in Japan, your tax dollar here goes a lot further. So that's the first thing to consider with Japan. The second thing is people don't borrow. The culture here is more savings. It's not borrowing. You got to remember that's a much better culture to have, especially if the money is as cheap as it has been in the West. So when you've got this cheap money and everyone's borrowing, they don't have to pay back much interest. They just keep borrowing and creating new money into existence. Highly inflationary as well. The Japanese don't have that problem where they just keep borrowing on top of borrowings. The government does, but at least the government hasn't been reckless. So you can see here, you've got the toy bazookas there in Japan and they haven't materialized into real bazookas. As opposed to the UK, it's looking like the toy bazookas are materializing into real bazookas, and that's going to create massive amounts of inflation. Hopefully I explained that a little bit. Hopefully that explanation was pretty good for you guys. Jim Slim, $5 donation. Thank you, brother, so much for the donation. Anyone seen the new thread director? It was doing parallel assignment for P and E for different apps in parallel. So I haven't seen that yet. And that's going to be something interesting to look at where if they get a new thread director, hopefully they make it available for Windows 10. Seriously, I agree with you guys. I don't like Windows 11. Even though I'm using it now, it does have a better, smoother looking UI. It's just full of bugs. I don't know if any of you guys have been on Windows 11. Have you tried opening a song and it just sits there? I'm trying to open a video file or a song, especially sometimes MP3s, and my computer just sits there for 5 seconds and then it says, I can't open it. And then you got to open it again, open straight away. It's a really weird bug in Windows 11 that I never got in Windows 10. So the dual X99 Xeon board. I thought that came up. There it is there, X99 dual CPU. So they're selling AliExpress boards now on Newegg. Newegg's if you guys want cores, then you can get cores. But I think one thing that Intel has done pretty well this time around, the funny thing was there was this big push towards more cores and more threads. And I'm finding Intel is now doing a great job of throwing out cores, 24 cores, even though 8 of them are the old school cores, right? 8 cores, 16 threads. That's what you used to. You've now got 16 cores of E-cores, little cores. So when it comes to people looking on the shelves, they're going to see a 7950X, 16 cores. They're going to see an Intel 13900K, 24 cores, and it's winning on the benchmark charts. So Intel have sort of played this very smart game in terms of where they're going with the 13900K. And so that's why you're seeing, I guess, it's not justified. I personally hate it how they've gone, both AMD and Intel have gone way above the efficiency peak curves. But that's why they're trying to get the top of the benchmarks now, because whoever's got the most cores, and now whoever's got the top of the benchmark charts, people are just going to see that and go, oh, yep, I'm getting the Intel. Why would I want inferior performance? So they're doing a smart job. Like, they're beating AMD now at the marketing. At least we've got to check and validate the scores. But AMD's marketing, Intel's marketing is starting to get up there in terms of what it's doing. But I don't agree with the way they presented these numbers at their conference. Like, I thought, like, any enthusiast knows how, like, the AMD numbers were bad, but these numbers are just like horrendously bad. So this was on a new level of bad. So that's what Intel managed to show. But again, everyone knows they're going to have a pretty good product because Alder Lake is already a good product. So if you're giving more over Alder Lake for similar money, you're already winning. Like Intel, you're already winning there. There's no need to be disingenuous about the benchmarks. So anyway, guys, back to the Q&A. You guys aren't popping in for many chats today. So English pounds, yeah. So the word on the street is if you're in England, the pound is getting a pounding. So yeah, so we got here, the US dollar is much stronger than the yen right now. Japanese yen has literally done worse than euro against USD. Yeah, for now. Definitely for now. Traders have speculated hard against the Japanese yen, but you can start to see that curve is starting to run out of juice. Guys like me are like, wow, the Japanese yen's never been this cheap. I'm buying. So yeah, there's different ways of thinking about it, but yeah, essentially Japan's in a bad situation, but I feel like other economies are in a worse situation than Japan is, especially seeing it firsthand. And the good thing about Japan is, funny thing is with inflation, like if anything goes up here, they announce it on the TV. Like this popular item, this popular beer is going up by 3%, and they'll tell everyone, and it's happening from next month. I think McDonald's here in Japan were like, oh, something's going up on the menu by 10 yen starting from next month. So they're very transparent about the inflation here, it's actually a little bit more like relieving to see. Whereas opposed to in Australia, I'd go to different places and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, where did this massive hike come from in terms of the prices? So yeah, inflation's a big problem, and it depends on the monetary directions of countries, but England's already starting to show a very concerning trend. I'm going to be covering that. I'm going to be following that closely, that's for sure. So because the new CPUs are designed to hit 95 degrees, does that mean they run full RPM constantly? So basically to compare it what AMD is doing to cars, if we're talking about RPM, running at 95 degrees, it's fine. Like, it is fine. AMD's not lying there. It is fine to run your CPU at 95 degrees. If they've guaranteed that, they've done the stress testing. But is it desirable? Absolutely not. I don't think it's desirable to run your CPU at 95 degrees at 230 watts. I've already proven that by dropping it down to 55 degrees and getting a 5% performance drop with nearly half the power. So it's not desirable. And to sort of give you guys a car analogy on, like, off the top of my head, it'd be like having a car running at 6,000 RPM everywhere. Would you want it? Sure, your car could run at 6,000 RPM around the streets probably for 3 years, the term of the warranty on the car. But in terms of where the desirable efficiency of running that car is, it's probably around closer to 3,000 RPM or 2,200, depends on the car. But you got to find that efficiency curve for yourself. So again, if you like running your CPU at 230 watts at 95 degrees, you got to ask yourself, do you like driving around in second gear everywhere in your car? And I haven't seen anyone in my life just drives around second gear everywhere, especially when they get up to towards 80 kilometers. It's like, no, I got to change into third gear. Why? Because I'm just recklessly abusing my car. Anyway, hopefully that analogy was decent. And yeah, so okay, guys, do you know what cooler is good for Intel 13th gen? Yeah, at the moment, you got to see how it behaves. But I'm pretty sure, especially on a 13600K, if you're into tuning a little bit, you should be able to get away with the $20 Snowman cooler. In terms of AMD, same deal. You should be able to get away. You should be able to get away with say for instance, 7600X. You should be able to get away with the Snowman as well. and maybe a 7700X. But for a 7900X, 7950X, I'd go with something a bit bigger. So bold of you to assume we are driving manual. I mean, I'm giving the example of driving manual. I mean, even on auto, you can drop it in the low gear, sort of like manually. So Greg will not be here today. No, Greg is he's on holiday at the moment. So I actually asked him, do you want to come on for a live stream? It'd be great to bounce off someone. And you guys were enjoying Greg being on the last live stream. So definitely enjoyed having him on. I will, again, I did this at short notice. I'm not going to lie. I have to get 2 live streams done a month as part of sponsorship agreements with Corsair and SCD Keys. So I'm under the pump a little bit there. I do make videos in relation to what agreements I signed. And yeah, that's, but at the same time, I love doing the live streams as well. They're really good. You guys bring a smile to my face in chat as well, because a lot of you guys are just, again, so open-minded. Like, I really enjoy what audience we're building up here at Tech Yes City, where I haven't really copped a lot of hate in the last, since the start of this year. There's been like virtually no hate in the comments section. So that's been absolutely amazing to see. Greg Yeses, yeah, Greg's doing really, he's a really good friend. Like, we hung out a lot behind the scenes when we went to events as well. I'm looking forward, maybe hopefully if everything doesn't go to crap, looking forward to going to Taiwan next year. That'd be awesome for Computex. So, 13600K or 7700X. Again, if you're asking me without even testing the stuff, I'd be going for the 13600K because DDR4 support, and you've already got cheaper motherboards out there. The whole platform costs are already laid out bare for the 13600K. And you know it's going to be better than the 12600K, and the 12600K is already pretty good value. So yeah, I'd say the victory, like if we're asking about speculating on the victory, I'd say it already goes to the 13600K. So yeah, that's the Raptor Lake. I guess they really started bringing the Raptor attack here. I think that's maybe that's the reason they called it Raptor Lake. They're going on the offensive now. So we got a $5 donation here from Meximan and Cheese. Apologies if you already spoke about this, but will the CPU always running at 95 degrees wear out and all-in-one's faster? I mean, it's the amount of heat that's getting transferred to the all-in-one and how much it's got to cool. So essentially, if the pump has a variable speed that works along temperature, yeah, you're going to wear it out with more heat being dumped into that all-in-one. So you're going to wear out your CPU faster. You're going to wear out your all-in-one faster. Now, one thing that remains to be seen is, I mean, if you're using the CPU, say for instance, all the time, whether, I think some people are buying them for crypto mining, like XMR or something, like some people like still want to do that. But if you're using that for 3 years at 5.1 gigahertz, 230 watts, is that going to last for the whole warranty period? AMD says yes. I would say remains to be seen. Has anyone actually tested this for 3 years straight running at 230 watts? No, it's impossible. No one's done it yet. So they've only really got their standard deviation models and calculations out. So they've said it's fine, but again, I'd be definitely undervolting the 7950X. So yeah. Anyway, hopefully that answers that question. Whew, man, how well do you think AMD's G variant will perform this generation? I think it'll perform a lot better. DDR5, that's one thing I'm actually really looking forward to, right? We've now got DDR5 to alleviate the bandwidth issues that DDR4 placed on the previous 5600G, for example. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to that. So hopefully AMD can really, they'll probably be releasing something similar, but because of the DDR5, it'll allow it to run at higher bandwidth. So we'll move over now to more Q&A. Stay with us here, guys. Stay with us. So, can't wait for the next Greg haircut in Taiwan. So that's it. Greg's going to get a haircut in Taiwan. I think, actually, speaking of haircuts, we'll address the title now, finally on the video. So AMD is going to get a haircut, right? Will AMD have to do a haircut with Raptor Lake? And so this is where part of me says that AMD have a very difficult uphill battle with AM5 because, as we spoke about in this stream, money's getting tight, right? Money's getting tight in the US especially. And so when central banks start doing what they're doing in the US, money's getting tighter now. Plus, inflation has eaten into people's discretionary income big time. And then AMD on top of that has made it so expensive to get into getting a 7600X. Got to get DDR5, got to get an, at the moment, X670 motherboard. So I believe the 7600X is actually not going to sell too well. 7700X, same thing. Because people are like, well, I'm spending all this money, I might as well just get a 7900X or a 7950X. And so I think a lot of that stuff is going to sit on the shelves, and AMD is going to have a rude awakening where they're like, whoa, we've got to take a haircut and we've got to start releasing things as fast as possible. I think you'll see those B650 motherboards will be released very quickly because not many people will be picking up the 7600X. So AMD is going to have to take a haircut even without Raptor Lake's intervention. But then we have Raptor Lake on the horizon. And when that comes out, I believe a lot of budget gamers are going to go towards that. Especially if they, say for instance, 13600K, or I think the 13400, it's rumored to be on the same node. I think the 13400 is rumored to be just a beefier, older Lake. Remains to be seen there. I didn't get enough information on that. But in terms of the 13600K, I think that's going to do better than the 7600X, just because now Intel will have like, whoa, I think you're getting 14 cores versus 6 cores, and it's going to be a similar price. So they're going to have that core advantage for marketing. People are going to fall for the marketing. But also the E-cores will do something as well. They will add to performance, and so they will give people value in certain applications too. And they got the iGPU as well. So the 13600K actually looks like it may be the MVP of the new Raptor Lake lineup. So plus, we've already got, as people are pointing out in the comments, B660 Classic. That's a great value board. I checked that out. Really solid motherboard for the money. I was really surprised with the Soyo. And that's why I've been looking at Soyo's products. They're coming in, and they're really competitive. Actually, we can check out what Soyo's, like, I guess the B550, this went up. This was like going for $65. I bought one at $65. I've been meaning to do a build and a review on it. This board here got this for really cheap, so hopefully it comes back down in price again. But we've also got the B660 Soyo, and that's coming in at, wow, motherboard costs are going up, fellas. Whoa, okay, this was $120, I think. So be careful with pricing here. Things are starting to go up because, again, this is the problem. This is why I was, oh wow, Juan and Z have a really cheap board here for $80. B660, 80, wow. That's insane. That's really cheap for what it is. So look at that. That's crazy. Whoa, we got a $50 super chat. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You guys, you don't have to donate money. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the donations. I'll John Nguyen. Hey Tech, yes, been watching since way back in the day, 2013, 2014. Wow, thank you for watching so long. Thank you for your reviews. Everyone hypes the CPU, GPU releases. You're the only one that brings it down to reality and talk about efficiency. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. I guess in fact, this time around with these launches, I'm probably even less excited than I have ever been because of the whole cost structure, right? There used to be the 3600, and when that came out, you had the B450 motherboard. Like, when you look at that combo, you had AMD releasing a CPU with a CPU cooler that worked really well. The B450 was really good value. The CPU was really good value. In games, it used very little power out of the box. It was very efficient out of the box. You didn't have to tune it much. This was like the combo. This is what I wanted as an enthusiast. I wanted people to go out and buy this CPU. The 10400F from Intel was the same scenario. And now, look at where we're at. 7600X, $250 motherboards. Got to go out and buy DDR5 memory. And I got to express my true feelings about this stuff, and it's not positive. Like, I don't know how I can be positive about this. Yeah, guys, let's go get ripped off for things that we don't really even need. For instance, I'm using a mini ITX motherboard. I don't need all these extra features from a motherboard. I don't need 5 PCIe slots. I don't need all these extra memory slots. I don't need these SATA ports. I don't need all these extra ports because I got also on that motherboard, I got a Thunderbolt USB. So if I need all that stuff, I just connect the Thunderbolt like I'm doing here for 4 monitors and an extra keyboard and mouse to plug in, and even a memory card reader and everything. I just plug that hub in and I've got all this extra connectivity at my disposal if I need it. So it's just like PC gaming is going into this ridiculous, like, sooner or later, you'll probably start seeing like Louis Vuitton pairing up with a Zeus, and you'll have like a designer motherboard, right? All this stuff and crap that you do not need. Hey guys, come get the Louis Vuitton Lightning motherboard. And people will be like, what? Like, what is going on here? And so like, I come from the old school PC gamers, right? Back, like, I'm going to say back in the day, but back in the day, PC gaming was so much different. Everyone was just discussing all the time, like peak efficiency, peak like this, peak that. Everyone was always helping each other. It was just all facts. So the old school PC enthusiasts will always just stick to facts. And even if someone comes in with the fanboy blazing, running hot, like sometimes it's a good laugh, but sometimes it just gets so repetitive and you hear the same crap all the time. And so it's like PC gaming, that's why I'm just going to go do the used parts hunt. And everyone who watches the used parts hunt is just always on the same side. So it's like we're one big team with used parts. We're always looking for the best price performance. But when you throw in new products, it's like you got all these arguments that you know are just straight up wrong. And even if you explain them, people don't listen. They don't care. It's just like, okay, on to the next comment section to go write some trash in someone else's comment section. So, whew, Tech Yes Boomer, baby. That's it, baby. I'm becoming a boomer, man. That's it, Tech Yes Boomer. I'm changing the channel name to Tech Yes Boomer. So, we're rolling here, fellas. We're rolling. So, yeah, and thanks for watching. Back in 2013, we were sticking to more like, we had the whole used ARC era. I'm getting back to the used ARC era as well. But 2013, I was doing much more like commentary videos as well. So, really cool that you've been sticking around for that long. Thanks so much. Okay, so we'll get back to the questions here. Thoughts on Intel's new ARC video showing the A750 and A770. Again, with ARC, I really have to see the performance on ARC in person because like I was looking up some benchmarks. I think I was looking up some productivity benchmarks with the it was one of the Intel ARC GPUs just came up on that benchmark. I forgot which one it was, but it was absolute garbage. Like it was really low. So Intel, and this was like a recent benchmark that came up. So you got to be careful. Wait for the benchmarks for sure with the A770 and stuff like that. So I'm going to be basically testing out. If I get an Intel Arc GPU come in, I'm just going to be playing games on it too, check for stuttering. And and that's what I mean. If you can go out and buy, like look at the 6600M. Look at this graphics card. I don't care if people say, oh, it's a 329 MSRP. You can get this graphics card now for $190. $190. That's a lot cheaper than $329. So when I do reviews of graphics cards, whether it's Intel Arc or Nvidia or whatever, this is the baseline I'm going to be comparing it to because this is such a good deal on the new market. Anyone can buy it. You don't have to stress about going out and waiting for a sale, going out and getting a mad used deal. This is already a good new deal as it stands. If you want no hassles, no stress, you've got it right here with an RX 6600M desktop variant. So, man, we're going into interesting times. But keep in mind, though, this period of, like, say, for instance, RX 6600Ms, if central banks start reversing course, these products are going to go up in price very quickly. So that's why I'm saying we're in the golden age of PC gaming right now when it comes to getting the right stuff. It's not the golden age for going out and buying an AM5. That'll probably come down in price. I'm predicting it will come down in price. But like if you look at Ryzen 5 5600, RX 6600M, these are great combinations. And it's actually a really good price performance PCs that you can put together right now. So we're in a golden age where you can go grab used stuff as well. And you can go get deals like people were telling me, RX 6700s for $150 used. That's really good price performance. So get on it, guys. If you want to build a PC, it's a great time. Just got to be looking what you can get. So are you a millennial, Brian? Yeah, so I'm a millennial, not a boomer, I'm a millennial. So that's it. Brian, did you hear about Ryzen 5 3600 listed recently on a Romanian website? Someone said that. Yeah, someone was talking about the Ryzen 5 3600. Someone was talking about that. Also got another $20 dono. Thanks, John. Thanks heaps for that. So absolutely, I can afford it, but the tech yes in me say, is it worth it? That's it. I'm on a 4670 KOC. I do need upgrade, but used market or last gen is looking good. Yeah, go ahead on the used market, man. You're going to get some ripper deals. Even people selling dirty PCs that they couldn't be bothered cleaning. This is going to be the best deal you can get, period, right? Is someone who wants to go out, they're cashed up, they've made a heap of money recently, whether they've been working in the mines or they've been doing something extremely profitable. They'll come home, look at their gaming PC. AM5's out. I'm just going to get rid of this old PC. I don't need it anymore. And they'll put it up. Like, it'll be like a high-end PC. They'll put it up at $500 and you'll get such good value. Just go swoop that deal and then clean it up a little bit and you'll be having like a $2,000 PC for $500. They're the best deals. I don't really talk about it too much because I like to get those deals for myself in the used hustle. But because you've definitely shown a great, generous, you put a generous foot forward there. Thank you so much. So always help you guys with information and help you out there. Let's have a look at this 3600 AF. It's spotted. So apparently it's a 5600 and it's just more value. So interesting. This is going to be a crazy CPU to get then. This is going to be a new meta, man, if it comes out. But I mean, is it going to be 126 USD? So the 3600 AF is going to be 126 US dollars. So that's going to be a really good deal. There you go. The AF, there it is there. So that'll be like the AliExpress 5600, but even cheaper. So usually, as we saw with the 1600 AF, it was like basically a 2600, really good value. So I mean, you're probably not going to pick, like I never saw the 1600 AF available on AliExpress. That was the weirdest thing. So you won't probably see this on AliExpress. And also another $5 donation from Meximan and Cheese. Thank you so much. With the crazy prices of RAM and AMD would have hit a slam dunk if they launched with the 3D variants, since those are less affected by RAM speed. Yeah, they've got the 7800 X3D. Everyone knows that's going to come. They left that in the product stack, 7700X. And they also had the 7900X. They got that slot there. So X3D will be, I think, X3D will be a good option for high-end enthusiasts who want the latest and greatest. They don't care about money. They're going to go buy the 4090. They're going to go get the X3D chip. But again, they should have released that straight away. I think that would have been a great, I do agree, they should have released that straight away. Everyone is already looking at getting, instead of getting a 7600, a lot of people are just looking at getting a 5800 X3D. So I was like, why would I want to go get this 7600X when I've already got the motherboard, already got the DDR4 memory? I'll just go slot the upgrade in, and already got the cooler. Probably already got the cooler to support it. So, whew, okay, we got Marketplace, Facebook Marketplace around B&E Brisbane. So B&E's Brisbane, guys. The prices seem to be overinflated still. Okay, I've heard from locals that they've been getting good deals. They just got to really pick it up. Though the best deals I have heard are from people in the US. So people who have been telling me about the deals they're getting is in the US. Australia, I've been hearing about some good deals. Haven't been hearing so much about UK friends, but I'll keep you guys updated. Japan is pretty solid. Like, I've been picking up decent deals. Not the best I've heard, but they've been decent deals. And I'll be looking again later today. So 3600 AF at 126 seems like that, and a used RX 6600 would be rocking setup. Exactly. 13400 out when? No idea. I think Intel's seeding out the K chips first. Again, just like AMD and Nvidia, everyone wants to make money, as much money as they can, these companies. So expect to see a 13400 after Christmas. I say these new CPUs will be out until Christmas. They want to sell as many as they can. Also, speaking of Christmas, they want to get out as many products as they can before Christmas. This is why it's a big rush now. Everyone's rushing out their products to get it out before Christmas because they're like, oh, we want to milk the consumer before Christmas. So anyhow, how low can a 3080 go used? Ooh. Don't know. I'm predicting you'll see as low as 350. I have heard of 400 picking up 3050s for $400. I've heard that already. I think 350 would be a strike price for me personally if I see a 3080 going for 350 USD. What is that noise? Sorry, there's like some real beeping noise going on. Like, what? It's a weird noise. like a UFO's outside or something beeping. Sorry about the stream interruption. 5800 X3D is long in the tooth. Do you think the 7000 X3D or 7800 PBO locked like the X3D? That would kind of kill the line of CPUs in my opinion with that insane heat. So I do think it will be the same scenario. I think it'll be the same formula as the 5800 X3D. So I do believe it'll be the same. So they're just tuning those things for max out of the box performance. But 5800 X3D wasn't too power hungry. It was a pretty good gaming chip. So they were, like, for what you were getting, it's a great gaming chip. It's for high-end enthusiasts. Not great value. Even people are saying X3D is value. It's actually not. Like, value still with the 5600 or the 12600K or even like 5500 with smart access memory. So it's just Japan being Japan. What are we talking about? Sorry, sorry, must have missed a few comments on that. What are we talking about with Japan being Japan? It's just Japan being Japan. Is 1050 for brand new Asus RTX 3080 Ti from Amazon a good deal? So how much would that be USD? We'll check if that is a good deal for you. So how much? 1050. Let's have a look. 150 AUD to USD. Nah, it's not that great of a deal. I mean, it's okay. Like if you have to go out and buy a GPU, it's okay. But yeah, I think you will be able to get, like, again, it's not bad. It's not too bad, but you'll be able to pick up cheaper with what's going on right now. So not bad, but not great as well. So yeah. Alien. Oh, we're talking about aliens. Okay. It's a Skynet test run. Exactly, guys. I bet they won't even, do even one more on 3D chip, but it's never going to happen again. Take a city, the beeping. Yep. Oh, okay. Yeah. The noise, UFOs, Japan beeping. Yeah, it's exactly right. Just these noises going on with UFOs. And so we got 3D. Sorry. You guys are still asking the questions on. Okay, have you guys seen the leaked Raptor Lake 34-core design HEDT revived? Nope. And honestly, I'm over HEDT. For me, I've found like how to utilize the iGPU for Premiere Pro. So like I'm home and hosed with a 12900K. Maybe the 13900K will be an upgrade. But with HEDT, I'm seeing where the pricing of mainstream's already going. And I'm guessing if you wanted to get a 34-core Raptor Lake, it's going to be a huge price jump as well. So, yeah, 34 cores. So they could have a monster, but honestly, at this stage, I'm just like, whoa, we've already seen what's going on with AM5. I'm not looking forward to HEDT anymore. So, there's that. Okay, so the 3D 32mm squared 64-bit added $45 of TSMC price to AMD from $165 to $210, and the lowest clearance sale retails $315. Okay, thanks for that, Mike. Oh, Mike's in the chat. How are you, Mike? Thanks for that. So basically, it's like the margins are there for the CPU. But one thing I will add on margins, like when I talk about margins, so we will address margins with these companies. When I say they aim for 60%, they're aiming like Nvidia, Intel, AMD, they're aiming for that golden 60% margin on everything, right? Income minus expenses. And a lot of expenses as well is R&D. There's so much expense that these tech companies have to take into account. So when I look at even if a X3D costs $210 and it's going on sale for $315, I got to think, wow, how much R&D went into that? And with Ryzen, they did spend a bit on R&D, so they have put a lot of R&D into it. So for me, that's at $310. That's for what it is a pretty decent deal. If you want the highest end CPU with the X3D, so that's an interesting thing with silicon. So you'd be surprised though with Threadripper when that was out. For instance, if you want to talk about margins, I know for Threadripper, that was insane. So Threadripper was crazy. Like you were looking at, say for instance, one of those chips back before this massive amount of inflation, Threadripper would have been like $150 for a 32 core, or maybe $200, and then they were selling it for like $2,000. Or so they were really making huge margins on Threadripper. Extreme Zone 987, Canadian $5. Love your content. Been watching for a while. Thanks for the donation, brother. When will your next used parts hunt be? It's today. I'm going on later today. So I'm starting the video. I've got to run out and do some visa stuff, but while I'm out on that trip, I'll be used parts hunting. So that's coming very soon. I hopefully will get the video out tomorrow. I don't want to let you guys down. I always want to religiously do the used parts hunt once a month, whether I have to or not. And it's been a tradition here at Tech Yes City that I want to keep up. And it's one of the things I love doing. So that'll be coming very soon. And you guys are like, here, Brian, here's some money to go do a better used parts hunt. So thanks for that as well. So we'll finish up. We'll start closing up some questions. I do have to get ready to bounce. I do have to bounce on out of here soon. I just realized my camera was on F7. Like I was doing some B-roll. Just wait. We'll turn it down. Get a bit more bokeh. So now it should be like a blurrier. We should have a blurrier scene. Like pretty camera, pretty... Look at this. Pretty camera, pretty vibes. Yeah, we should have more bokeh now. So let's go to chat. Get back to you guys here. And let's go. Why Optane when you can have PCIe 4 on M.2 with massive random and read-write speeds? Yeah, I mean, you can, especially if you need the speeds on SSDs, just getting the best SSD, getting a best single SSD. For me personally, a lot of people like to mix SSDs. I just use a single SSD. Even if it's like an OS drive and a scratch drive, I just would rather get a better SSD that's faster and use that as the hybrid and do everything on it. So that's what I've found personally. A lot of people probably have different thoughts on that, but does the Bogan work in Japan? No, like, I mean, YouTube, I'm just doing YouTube really. And at the moment I've been having a bit of a break from Australia and everything. So I'm busy, and then every spare minute I can get, I spend it with my boy. And so, yeah, hopefully that answers that one. And next question as well, better off getting a couple of Xeons or Ryzen for CAD Blender workstation build? Don't know. I can't tell you. I'm not well versed in CAD or Blender, so I cannot give you an answer on that, Mike. Sorry about that. Maybe if someone's well versed in CAD or Blender, they can either, if they hear this later in the stream, they can drop a comment for you or reply in this live stream. But I don't know. Yeah, I'd say for CAD, maybe getting, I'd have to guess maybe getting the highest single thread IPC would be the best way to go. Since if it's anything like Adobe, a lot of these companies, they just stick to a lot of outdated code and they don't update their code. So which is better, a 4060 Ti or a 4080 12 gig? It's a tricky question. They are the same thing. It's a good joke. Brian won't show out, right? It seems like he's really... Yeah, I've been cozying up in Japan. I do want to get back to Australia though, so I do miss Australia. Is there such a thing as a PCIe to CPU power connector if for your power supply only has one CPU connector? There is, like, if you are into slamming, basically with a PCIe 6 pin, even with an 8 pin, it's dodgy as, but you can swing it upside down, cut the one of the PCIe powers, so you got a 7 pin, and you can ram a 7 pin into an 8 pin. In terms of ramming a CPU 8 pin into a PCIe slot, haven't tried it, won't try it, but the PCIe slot into the CPU slot, I have done some janky stuff in the past. So, and that's all I'm going to say on that. Still good to upgrade from Skylake, Kaby Lake to an AM4 platform. Yeah, definitely. Yep, definitely. 5600 is a great upgrade. So especially with AM4 boards being as cheap as they are, if you've got your DDR4 memory and it's decent, can pull that over as well. And yeah, stay on the lookout for that 3600 AF as well. If you've got an i7, especially if you've got an i7 Skylake, they still sell. Like, you could probably get just as much money for an i7 6700K used as you could buy for a 5600. That's how crazy it is. So some of those old i7s, they retain their value. And if you're looking for a cheap performance upgrade, you probably get some good money for it. 7950X will be best for CAD raw power. Okay, there you go. So Brocky's done research. Thanks for that. He's answered your questions, Mike Jones. So is there anything worth upgrading from an 8700K to 9th gen? Not really. 8700K is pretty solid. I mean, the 9900K is there, but it's, yeah, 8700K is solid, man. You're going to be satisfied with that CPU. Did you notice the 353 watt TDP on the Intel part? No, I didn't notice that. That's, if they're doing 353 watt, that's insane. Oh man, like, I don't even want to go there. 250 watts is already enough. So Some YouTubers are saying there will be no 4060 Ti or 4070, but only Nvidia knows at the moment. No one knows. Like, I'm guessing there will be, but again, they've got it. They have like these, like all these tech companies, they massively overordered. Nvidia being the biggest player that got caught. They overordered way too much. Even the 4000 series silicon, there was rumors that they overordered on that too. They just thought this boom was just going to continue. It was never going to stop. But they should have stopped like in December of 2021. The warning signs were there. The curve on the printers was slowing down. The Federal Reserve last year slowed down the printers. So you could see that curve coming in. So I was like, with Nvidia, I was like, man, they should really employ someone there who's an economist or something. Like they needed someone there to say, okay, we can accurately forecast that demand is not going to be as strong in 2022 as it is in 2021. And they should have done that, but they really failed their forecasts. They got caught with their pants down massively. AMD as well with GPUs. They admitted that in their Q2 investor report. And so these companies got massively caught off guard. And now you've got a massive flood of 3000 series cards that need to be sold one way or the other. And so how do you sell that? Well, you offer your new 4000 series at a premium. And so that's the obvious answer there. And so delay any 4060 or 4060 Ti or any of those cards, just delay them because you have to clear out a massive oversupply of 3000 series cards. So I do think there will be a 4060, but I just think there's so many graphics cards that need to be cleared, and they've got the pressure from the used market now with crypto cards. So there's so much pressure on GPUs right now. And then on top of all that, the worst thing is you've got the worsening discretionary income conditions for the individual. So it's a crazy situation right now, and it's one that's not good for Intel, AMD, or Nvidia. So yeah, and you're finding out, like we're finding out live, and we were saying, like I said I said in the AMD villain video that this is like, I saw this scenario kind of play. I could see this playing out. People are going to get this. They're going to add to cart. They're going to be like, okay, let's add an X670 board. Okay, this is $300. Let's add that in. Okay, man, I'm going to get 64 gigabytes of DDR5. Like, I'm going to add this in. So we'll do it live for you guys. Show the, like, this is going to be the YOLO. The YOLO who's like, oh man, I'm going to get that. AMD recommended the 6000 megahertz stuff. 64 gigabytes, 6000 megahertz. AMD's telling me this is the bomb, and we're gonna add that. So 64 gigabytes, is that it's 4800. Come on, give me the expensive stuff. Come on, I need 6000 megahertz. 5600. We'll just settle for that. Okay, we'll settle for that. It's a good in between there. Okay. Oh wait, okay, we got 3 items in the cart, and then we got to get a new cooler. So we've got to get AM5 water cooler. Let's have a look. Add H150i. No, we want an H170, man. Let's go for an H170, because honestly though, I would, if you were going for an H170, like H150, just go for an H170i. It's a much better cooler, but again, $220. Then you're like, okay, let's go to checkout. Proceed to checkout. Let's have a look. No, I'm not signing in. Just let me view the cart. Let me view the cart. 4 items. All right, there we go. $1,600. So again, you're like, okay, I want to get on this latest AM4 platform. It's like, I want to get on this, man. I really want to check it out. And so what you're left with is you're left with a total cost here of $1,628. So there you go, guys. They just added into the cart. And even if you change this out, let's change this out. Like, hey, man, I want to get, like, say, for instance, I want to get, let's just go for the cheap option here, like 32 gigabytes, 5200. Let's go a little bit cookie cutter here. I want to just save a little bit of money. Okay, $180 looks fantastic. Okay, that's looking great. 7600X. AMD is going to be suffering big time from what I'm calling the card effect. It's going to be the final checkout card effect here. And let's just go, like, say for instance, we're just going to play it safe with a 120 mil Not to mention, I didn't even add in a new power supply. AO, let's 85 bucks. Like, yeah, okay, that looks pretty, it's not even available. Hey, you tricked me. Okay, let's go with a Sith, 70 bucks. Like, that's a pretty beefy cooler. That should do the job. Okay, what are we looking at now? I've added, okay, gotta get rid of this motherboard too. We don't, no, we actually have to have an X670. We'll go with the cheapest X670 motherboard, because that's all that's available. Maybe, I saw one for was it 250? Was it 250? We'll try and look for the cheapest motherboard we can get. 260, okay, there it is there. All right, so say for instance, I'm like, okay, I want to budget AM5. I want to get 32 gigabytes of RAM. I want to get the TAS special. I'm like, I'm budgeting here. $800, $808. There you go. That's your checkout price. You want to get some bargains? Like, look at this. $800. I got my 32 gig of DDR5. I got my budget cooler, like more budget on it. 7600X. It's not $300. It's $800. $815. And then you got to pay shipping and taxes. And on top of that, you can build a whole PC for like literally a solid PC, a good PC for around $500, $550 right now. RX 6600M. 5500 smart access memory, 16 gigabytes of DDR4. You can build a whole PC for much cheaper than this already. So budget gamers, even people who are value oriented, i.e. the majority of society right now, is going to look at this and go, wow, like AMD, like this is it, you know, $809 is your entry level price. Really, that's the cheapest I can get on here to get on AM5. Like, wow. We got some new members. Thank you on the live stream, becoming new members. Harris Aravalo, thank you, brother. And also John Wen, thank you for becoming a TYC supporter. I've also got an update behind the scenes video. That's coming very soon, just a vlog talking about a bit more finance, a bit more life. So stay tuned for that. So thank you guys for the subs, all the members as well. That's really appreciated. And so there's the cart effect with AMD. The cart effect, guys. People are going to get shocked at what's going on with the carts. So there you have it. It's not so appealing, right? That's, you know, everyone was looking. I remember someone linked me some. I did my villain video at 299. I did the villain video. Someone after that linked me this Nick Tech or something, like this baby dancing on the dance floor, like 299, like techno going and all this, like total. Just, I was like, yeah, wait until you see the cart, bro. See if he's still dancing at $809 just for the bare bones. So he's probably had a heart attack already. So there you go. And yeah. So anyhow, guys, that's about it for the hype train has been derailed basically. And as it stands right now, we're a buyer's market. These companies, I feel AMD is going to have to take the first haircut on the CPU line. Nvidia will have to take a haircut on the GPUs. And they've already, like, if you look at Nvidia, they've already taken massive haircuts. Everyone's having a haircut this year. These big companies. I've actually got to have a haircut too soon, like a little haircut. But these cards have already taken a price. They've actually gone up a little bit back in price. Wow, okay. The 3080 Ti has come down from it. That was $1,199 MSRP. Now it's $830. So they're already taking huge haircuts on some of their GPU lines. The 3090 Ti being the biggest one, and the 3090. They were going down to $1,000. So these GPUs, again, they've already taken a massive haircut. AMD, I feel, is going to have to follow suit. Not sweet, I think so. AMD's going to have to follow suit. They're going to have to take a haircut too on these CPUs. And then Intel, we're going to see how well they do, but same kind of scenarios playing out. So they're in big trouble. And they can hold back the supply all they want, but it's only going to hurt them. Because again, back to the consumer and price thresholds. The consumer can't spend what they don't have. So that's the biggest thing. Anyhow, guys, hope you enjoyed this live stream. If you've got like the final pressing questions, then do drop them, do ask, and I will try to answer the final. If you just joined the live stream, you're like, I need, some people are like, Brian, please answer my question sometimes. So if you've got that dying question, I will close down the live stream and just closing everything off right now and ask that question. So 1300K, no budget, absolutely not. And do you expect early repricing of new CPUs? Yeah, I think you're going to see a repricing, or perhaps they release the 7600 7600 quickly. So that would be a thing. And B650, right? Suddenly these two things get launched really quickly. That's what you could see. So, but definitely these companies are going to have to, they've been shaken up already. I feel like they're going to get shaken up even more. So thanks, Daryl. Becomes a TYC supporter. Thank you so much. So this is awesome, guys. You guys are supporting me too much this live stream. I feel like we got to wait and see though before we really get the numbers out. And last question, actually, we'll finish this stream off with a good question. Is X58 dead? No, it's not dead. X58 is absolutely fine. And the reason being is because look at the majority of titles. Like X58 can play Dota 2 absolutely fine. It can play CSGO absolutely fine. It can play all these, like it can play even, I don't know about Apex Legends. That's actually a good question though. So is it dead? Depends on X58 Apex Legends. I don't know. Yeah, okay. It can play Apex Legends. Okay, so yeah, the X58 can still play a lot of these popular titles. So there it is. So yeah, X58 is still absolutely fine. You gotta remember for the latest cutting edge games, I would say, you know, sure, some of the games just won't boot, but X58 is still fine. It's all about what you can get the parts for and keeping your options open. Personally though, I think if you can get on the newer, like X58 is power inefficient. And now that power is going up in price, that is something to consider, especially if you're gaming for long periods of time. So I am sort of trying to balance out older used gear with what's more power efficient now. So that is something I'm keeping in the back of my mind. So it's a crazy market, man. So EVGA, and Mike Bros, he says EVGA got caught at run end profit max cost equals price, and so said 5% has to be tax evasion. I would have no idea with EVGA's financials, but judging on how much EVGA made off the 2021, end of 2020 boom, just like Zotac. We got Zotac, they announced their numbers, right? We saw that 400% profit increase, 429%. Profits soared. And then all of a sudden, this year's a bad year. They bow out. So sure, some of it would have been Nvidia. Like I agree with like a lot of you guys said in the comments. It's both things, but I would say it's mainly the finance because they're in business, right, to make money, and they're not making so much money on GPUs this year. So I'd have no idea with EVGA and what they got caught doing and whatnot. But and they'd keep that very, very private. And obviously, they don't want to get caught like publicly saying, all right, it's all Nvidia's fault. And then they show that, hey, we made 500% profit increase in 2021. And then now we're losing money, which is I would guess was happening over at EVGA. So I called it out in that video. Just like they basically played it off as Nvidia's 100% at fault. And it's like, come on, guys, anyone with some common sense, Jensen says the more you buy, the more you save. That's not common sense in 2022, is it? So all this stuff is, but they're both at fault, but ultimately I think the money is the most powerful thing that influenced their decision. So Sam's tech stuff, calculate X58 power per year versus Ryzen 3600, 5500. 4 hours a day, 4 hours a week. I can't do it on live stream, and brain's not working that well today in terms of doing that. But it would add up over time. Depends on what kind of a gamer you are. 8 hours a day depends on the type of gamer, but 4 hours a day for somebody, that's probably a fair guesstimate. So the whole platform as well, which I don't have the whole platform of X58 on me at the moment. So does X58 support AVX? No, it doesn't, but I think there was a workaround, so people do have it working. So, all right, guys. Interesting how after your video, most tech tubers shifted their EVGA love. Oh, dude, I got so many messages behind the scenes. This is funny. Like, this is one thing I'm going to say before I get on out of here. One thing about this whole industry with tech YouTubing, I wish people would just come out and say what they're thinking now. It's getting annoying how like people are messaging me behind the scenes like, Brian, love the video, man, completely agree. Yet they're not saying these opinions on their channel. And I'm not going to say who, but like, you know who you are, guys. You got to come out and just say it how it is. Like, don't be afraid to say it how it is, right? At the end of the day, I want to be in a community where people are just sticking to facts. People are sticking to knowledge and we're improving this community. So we're not left scratching our heads when Intel releases these benchmarks and you're like, oh, why is that? Everyone knows why that is. They're going to call that out, of course, because it's beneficial for them to call it out. Like hating on Intel is still a strong thing. I don't agree with it. I don't think you should hate on any of these companies. They're in business just to be in business. They want to take your money. I think you should just criticize them on the products they release and how is that product going to benefit you, which is the best buy at the time. Of course, if they're starting to do things that are illegal, that's a different story. We can report on that. If they're doing things that are highly like illegal, they're going to get sued as well. So if they're running outside the law as well. But in terms of it, guys, don't show any of these guys loyalty, especially during these times. Don't show Intel, AMD, or Nvidia your loyalty. There's no point, especially now. And this is the thing. As the wolf's clothing starts, I don't know the analogy here, but as the curtain starts to unveil, you're starting to see the whole mess unfold. So that's the whole thing. As the curtains go away, and they got these pretty curtains, golden curtains, but as they're opening, you're starting to see, whoa, there's a big effing mess behind these curtains. And so how are people going to interpret that mess? So check your city. The problem is many YouTubers are also trying to imply how unbiased they are. They are biased. They should tell the truth and what they really think. Yeah, I mean, if you're biased, like I try to keep my personal biases out of recommendations. Like for instance, if we look at the 7950X, I'm not going to use that personally because I use Adobe. I use the iGPU. I'm not going to use the 7950X currently at my workflow. I ran the Puget benchmark. The 12900K does a better job. That's all I need to know. 12900K is best in slot for me right now for what I do. But I'm not going to let that affect my recommendation on who the 7950X could benefit. So I'm using this product, but I'm recommending the other product for who it's going to be best for. And so you got to stick to that. Just stick to facts. It doesn't matter. Who cares about a brand name? Just think of it as a unit. Like you should just ignore. Whenever you see a product, just wipe away the brand name and just look at the performance, look at the numbers, look at the price. That's all we're going to start doing. So just call Intel AMD, AMD Intel, and you'll be much better off if you're a fanboy. So then you'll start to really scrutinize. Anyhow, $500 worth it for a 1080 Ti 6700K PC in the US. Depends on how much RAM and what SSDs and what other value add. So if you've got a really good power supply, really good case, really good value add in terms of the other components, I'd say maybe, because then you can just replace the motherboard, sell off the 6700K motherboard and replace the motherboard and the CPU, and you'll have a really good time. Okay. Whew, we gotta jump out of here, guys. We gotta jump out of here. But Brian, would you do a $100 or $300 PC build in the future? Tech by Matt did one recently. Yeah, I've got a $100 PC. I got a $100 PC build like here. It's right here. I'm staring at it right now. H55, 430 watt, $10 power supply, GTX 760, 4-core 8-thread X3440. I got a $100 PC coming. I just need time. I wish the time gods would just suck me into another dimension where time was the unlimited factor. Is the move to Japan permanent, mate? No, not permanent. Like, I'm looking at being in both countries and being a bit more active. So I'll talk about it a bit more behind the scenes. It's at the moment though, yeah, time strapped as always. So anyhow, guys, I'll catch you in the next live stream. Thank you so much for tuning in, and hope you guys enjoyed all the information. I'll update with time tags as soon as I can. I'll update the description and pin a comment for Timetable on mobile timetables. And hope you guys enjoyed this one. Really do. Thanks for tuning in as always. And we've got an final question. AliExpress builds coming too. Lowest China manufactured build. Yep, we got that coming as well. I've got 2 builds that I really want to deliver for you guys. So you guys asked, and I've literally got the parts ready to go. So anyhow, thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, we will stick to mixing in economics and finance with all the content when we can. So end stream. Peace out for now. And if you stayed this far, be sure to hit the like button, drop a comment too. It really helps on the algorithm too. Help the tech, yes. Help us out. And it's what is it? That movie where it's like,